Welcome to this deep dive.
Oh.
Where we're trading our usual deep discussions for something a little more cheesy. We're talking about pizza.
Pizza.
But hold on.
Okay.
Before you start thinking about your favorite toppings,
Right.
we're not diving into just the food itself.
Right.
This is about the language.
The language of pizza.
And the sometimes surprising cultural baggage that comes with ordering a pizza.
It's amazing how something as seemingly simple as ordering a pizza can open up a whole world of cultural differences in how we communicate.
Absolutely. And our guide for this deep dive is an episode from a YouTube channel called Podcast Speak English.
I've seen that one.
Which is geared towards helping people learn English.
Right.
This episode focuses specifically on ordering pizza.
Ordering pizza. And it's a brilliant way to learn practical language in a real-world context.
I think that's a great idea, actually.
Yeah.
Because, when you're learning a language...
It's one thing to learn kind of like the grammar and the vocabulary, but to actually put it into practice in like a real-life situation, I think that's where it really sinks in.
Exactly.
And what's fascinating is that the episode doesn't just stop at basic vocabulary.
Right.
It delves into the nuances of polite language.
Okay.
The cultural significance of certain toppings.
Interesting.
And even different eating styles.
Oh, wow.
By the end of this deep dive, you'll be able to navigate a pizza order in English with confidence.
Nice.
And maybe even impress your friends with some newfound pizza knowledge.
Let's jump into the heart of it.
Okay.
The video starts with a typical pizza order dialogue.
Okay.
Walking us through phrases like medium pizza, extra cheese, thin crust. The kind of vocabulary that's essential for clear communication.
Yeah.
Especially if you're ordering in a foreign language.
Absolutely. Imagine trying to describe your pizza preferences.
Yeah.
Using only hand gestures.
Gotta be tough.
Having a grasp of these basic terms can save you.
Right.
From ending up with a sausage pizza.
Oh, yeah.
When what you really wanted was pepperoni.
Right.
But beyond avoiding order mishaps.
Sure.
These terms also give us a glimpse into the evolution of pizza itself.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that you mention it. The video does touch on some interesting cultural differences.
Yeah.
When it comes to topping.
Toppings. It's a big one.
They even brought in an Italian pizza expert who seemed pretty adamant about the difference between real Italian pizza and the anything goes American style.
I can imagine that that distinction actually speaks to a much deeper concept. The idea of food purity and its cultural significance, particularly in Italy.
Oh, wow.
For many Italians, pizza is a culinary art form with a long history and specific rules.
Right.
The ingredients are carefully chosen, and the preparation methods are time-honored traditions.
It's almost like comparing a classic novel to a choose-your-own-adventure book.
Oh, I like that analogy.
On one hand, you have a carefully crafted masterpiece with a defined structure.
Right.
On the other, you have the freedom to create your own story.
Precisely.
I like that.
And this difference in perception goes beyond just pizza. It reflects broader cultural attitudes toward food and tradition.
Interesting.
In some cultures, culinary practices are deeply rooted in history. And maintaining authenticity is paramount.
Right.
Whereas in other cultures like the United States, there's a greater emphasis on innovation and individual expression.
Yeah.
Leading to more fusion and experimentation.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. I always just assumed everyone viewed pizza as a blank canvas for toppings. But thinking about it now, it makes sense that different cultures would have such varied approaches.
Right.
Especially considering how pizza has evolved over time and across continents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as pizza traveled from Italy to America, it adapted to local tastes and preferences.
Right.
Leading to the wide variety of styles we see today.
Right.
Speaking of adaptation, the video also highlights the importance of using polite language when ordering.
Okay.
We hear phrases like, "This is Marty speaking," and "Would you like?"
It's interesting how those subtle language choices can make a difference in how an interaction is perceived.
Right.
It's almost like adding a layer of social lubricant to the conversation.
Absolutely. The field of linguistics actually has a term for this.
Okay.
Pragmatics.
Pragmatics.
Yeah, it's the study of how context contributes to meaning.
Oh, interesting.
In this case, using phrases like, would you like?
Right.
Instead of simply, do you want?
Yeah.
As a level of politeness and deference.
Okay.
That's particularly important in customer service situations.
It shows you're considering the other person's perspective.
Right.
And making an effort to be respectful.
Exactly.
Even in a simple transaction like ordering a pizza.
It's true.
And it's not just about individual interactions, it speaks to broader cultural norms around communication and politeness.
Right. Some cultures place a higher value on indirect communication and formality.
Okay.
While others are more direct and informal.
Right.
Understanding these nuances can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Especially when interacting with people from different cultural backgrounds.
It's like learning another language within the language itself.
Yes.
Going beyond the basic vocabulary and grammar to understand the cultural subtext.
And the episode goes even deeper, exploring the fascinating world of pizza etiquette.
Pizza
etiquette versus not folding individual pizzas versus sharing.
Wow.
All these seemingly minor details actually reveal a lot.
Yeah.
About cultural norms around food.
Interesting.
And how we interact with each other.
I never thought about it before, but even something as simple as how we eat pizza can be influenced by our cultural background.
Absolutely.
Now I'm curious to hear what you have to say about folding pizza.
Oh, folding pizza.
The Italian expert in the video seemed pretty passionate about that being the correct way to eat it.
That's a great example of how even seemingly insignificant food-related habits can be deeply ingrained in cultural traditions. In Italy, folding pizza is considered not only practical, but also a sign of respect for the pizza itself. It's a way of appreciating the craftsmanship that went into creating it.
That makes sense. In some cultures, there's a sense of reverence attached to food.
Yeah.
Especially traditional dishes. It's not just about sustenance.
It's more than that.
It's about honoring the history and the people behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have cultures where the focus is more on convenience and individual preferences.
Okay.
In America, for example, grabbing a slice and eating it on the go is perfectly acceptable.
Right.
Neither approach is inherently right or wrong.
Right.
It's just a reflection of different cultural values and priorities.
It's fascinating how something as simple as pizza can spark these conversations about cultural differences.
It is, isn't it?
Now, are you ready to tackle a slightly more controversial topic? The video mentions something that nearly made me spit out my metaphorical pepperoni.
Uh-oh. I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
The dreaded ketchup on pizza debate.
You got it.
Oh, no.
When they brought that up, I have to admit I was a little horrified.
Well, it's certainly a polarizing topic.
Yeah, it is.
But it's a perfect example of how culinary preferences are incredibly subjective.
Yeah.
And vary widely.
Sure.
What might be considered a culinary crime in one culture
Right.
could be a beloved tradition in another.
That's true. And it's not just about ketchup on pizza.
Right.
Think about all the other controversial pizza toppings out there. Pineapple, anchovies, olives.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like everyone has their own list of pizza loves and hates.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Pizza, despite its humble origins, has become a global canvas for culinary creativity and cultural expression.
And even beyond the toppings, there's the whole question of how we eat it, with our hands, with a knife and fork, individually or shared. It's all part of the cultural tapestry.
It's amazing how these seemingly small details can reveal so much about a culture's values and traditions.
This deep dive is already making me look at pizza in a whole new light. I never realized how much cultural and linguistic depth there is to uncover in something so familiar.
And we're just getting started.
Oh, boy. It's funny how we can go through life with certain assumptions about things, like pizza, and then suddenly have our whole perspective shifted.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I never thought about how my own pizza habits might be a reflection of my cultural background.
It's a common experience.
Is it?
We often don't realize the extent to which our culture shapes our perceptions and behaviors until we're exposed to different ways of doing things.
Makes sense.
And food being such a universal and personal experience is a prime example of this.
The video also touched on something that I found particularly intriguing.
Okay.
The idea that learning a language is about more than just memorizing vocabulary and grammar rules.
Right.
It's about understanding the culture behind the language.
The culture,
The unspoken rules and nuances that give words their full meaning.
That's a key insight, and the podcast Speak English episode illustrates this beautifully.
That's it.
It's not just teaching you how to order a pizza.
Right.
It's giving you a glimpse into how people interact.
Okay.
The social dynamics, the humor, the debates.
Interesting.
All through this seemingly mundane activity.
It's like they say, language is the roadmap of a culture.
Oh, I like that.
It tells you where its people come from and where they are going. And this video really brought that idea to life.
I can see that.
Showing how even a simple pizza order can reveal a wealth of cultural information.
Absolutely. And it doesn't shy away from addressing those potential cultural clashes that can arise from these differences.
Yeah.
For instance, the discussion about folding pizza sparked a lively debate about different eating styles.
Yeah, the Italian pizza expert was quite insistent that folding was the correct way to eat pizza.
Oh, really?
At least according to Italian tradition.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because it's not about one way being inherently right or wrong. It's about recognizing that different cultures have different customs and traditions.
Right.
And food being such a central part of culture is often where these differences become most apparent.
It's a reminder that what might seem strange or unusual to us is perfectly normal and accepted in another culture.
That's so true.
And approaching these differences with curiosity and an open mind can lead to a richer understanding of the world around us.
Precisely. And think about the different toppings people prefer.
Oh, yeah.
We've already talked about the pineapple debate.
Right.
But there are countless other examples.
I know.
Some people love spicy toppings. Others prefer vegetarian options. Some can't imagine pizza without meat.
It's like each pizza is a microcosm of personal taste and cultural influence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all of those preferences tell a story about our individual tastes, our cultural backgrounds, and the ways in which food has shaped our identities.
So it's like a culinary fingerprint.
Ooh, I like that.
And then there's the whole question of how we eat pizza with our hands, with a knife and fork individually, or shared.
Right.
Each approach reflects a different set of cultural values.
It's fascinating to observe how even the smallest details can reveal so much about a culture's values and traditions.
Yeah.
And it underscores the importance of being open-minded and respectful of those differences.
Right.
Especially when we're interacting with people from other cultures.
What I appreciate about the video is that it approaches these cultural differences with a sense of humor and curiosity rather than judgment.
It's a refreshing approach that encourages us to embrace the diversity of human experience.
Yeah.
Even in something as seemingly simple as pizza.
It reminds us that encountering something unfamiliar or even a bit strange can be an opportunity to learn and expand our perspectives rather than retreating into our comfort zones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to the core purpose of this video.
Okay.
Learning a new language.
Learning a language, right?
It's not just about mastering vocabulary and grammar. It's about gaining a deeper understanding of the people and culture behind the language.
It makes the learning process so much more engaging and rewarding.
I agree.
After all, who wouldn't rather learn about pizza etiquette than verb conjugations?
It's certainly a more palatable approach.
Yeah.
And it highlights the power of finding those relatable, everyday examples to connect with a new language and culture.
Right.
Like the saying goes, the best way to learn is by doing. And what better way to practice your English than by ordering a pizza?
It's a practical skill that can also be a cultural adventure.
For sure.
And who knows, it might even spark some interesting conversations about your own pizza preferences and how they reflect your cultural background.
Speaking of which, have your own pizza preferences changed at all after watching this video?
That's a good question.
I know, I'm feeling a little more adventurous.
You know, I have to admit, I'm kind of curious to try some of those toppings I usually avoid.
Right.
Just to see if my perspective has shifted at all.
Interesting.
I think this whole deep dive has made me realize how much I've been limiting myself, not just with pizza, but with approaching new experiences in general.
That's the beauty of learning.
Yeah.
It opens our minds to new possibilities and challenges us to step outside our comfort zones.
I agree.
And sometimes all it takes is a simple slice of pizza to spark that journey.
It's amazing to think that something as commonplace as pizza can be such a powerful vehicle for exploring language, culture, and even personal growth.
It just goes to show that there's always more to learn,
right?
Even from the things we think we know best.
And I think that's a great place to wrap up part 2 of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, from the history and cultural significance of pizza to the nuances of language and etiquette. But before we sign off, I want to hear from you, the listener.
Let's bring a listener in.
What does your ideal pizza look like?
Oh, that's a good question.
And what does that say about your cultural background?
What does your pizza say about you?
Or personal preferences?
Do you stick to the classics?
Right.
Or are you a culinary adventurer, always eager to try new and unusual toppings?
Are you a folder?
Ooh, are you a folder?
Or a non-folder?
Big question.
Do you believe pineapple belongs on pizza?
Ah, the age-old question.
These questions might seem trivial, but they can actually reveal a lot about who we are and where we come from.
Pizza as self-expression.
So take a moment to consider your own pizza philosophy.
Yeah, think about it.
What are your pizza non-negotiables?
What are your must-haves?
And what are you willing to compromise on?
What can you live without?
Maybe this deep dive has inspired you to try a new pizza topping. Or explore a different eating style.
I hope so.
Or perhaps it's reinforced your love
Yeah.
for your all-time favorite pizza combination.
Either way, we hope this episode has encouraged you to appreciate the rich cultural tapestry,
Yeah.
woven into something as simple as a slice of pizza.
Because ultimately, food is more than just sustenance.
That's right.
It's a powerful symbol of our shared humanity, a way to connect with each other across cultures and continents.
And who knows, maybe the next time you order a pizza,
Yeah.
you'll find yourself thinking about more than just the toppings.
Right.
You might be reminded of the fascinating interplay of language, culture, and personal preference that goes into every slice.
It really is fascinating.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, keep enjoying the wonderful world of pizza.
Until next time,
Happy pizzaing.
happy pizza-ing. Hey there, deep divers. Ready for this? Today, we're going to explore the Big Bang Theory.
The Big Bang Theory.
But get this through like a totally unexpected source.
Yeah.
An English learning podcast.
Wow.
I know, right? Who knew?
I knew.
That physics and language lessons could collide so spectacularly.
That's pretty cool.
But trust me, this is a wild ride.
Awesome.
You're not only going to learn about like the mind-blowing beginnings of the universe,
All right.
but you'll also snag some seriously cool science vocab along the way.
Nice.
Plus, we'll uncover some surprising opinions about the Big Bang.
Okay.
It's more controversial than you might think.
Interesting.
And hold on tight, because we've got some fun slang thrown in too.
I am intrigued.
Okay, so picture this.
Okay.
The podcast has these two friends just
Yeah.
hanging out, chatting.
Uh-huh.
One friend is totally reeling after a physics class about the creation of the universe.
I can imagine.
I mean, it's a pretty heavy topic to digest.
Yeah.
The other friend, a bit of a physics enthusiast, tries to explain things in a way that makes sense.
Got it.
What's really interesting is how the first friend uses these almost like unscientific comparisons to grasp the enormity of it all.
Right.
They bring up Atlas carrying the world,
Wow.
even African myths about turtles holding up the earth.
Really?
It's like they're trying to make this massive abstract concept fit into a familiar framework,
Interesting.
but their friend jumps in with the core concept of the Big Bang as explained in the class.
Okay.
Basically, an imbalance of particles and antiparticles created all the matter in the universe.
I see.
And here's the cool part.
Yeah.
They actually break down these complex terms in a way that anyone can understand.
That's great.
Exactly matter.
Matter.
That's just anything that takes up space and has weight.
Makes sense.
Think your coffee mug, your dog, even you.
Okay.
And they explain particles by saying, imagine an apple.
I never.
It's made up of tiny apple particles.
Okay.
Makes sense, right? But then there are antiparticles.
Antiparticles.
Yeah, antiparticles are definitely a bit trippier.
A little more complicated.
They describe them as particles with opposite charges.
Right.
That when they collide, basically obliterate each other.
Oh, wow.
It's like matter and antimatter in a cosmic showdown,
Right.
annihilating each other upon contact.
Intense.
They even use a beach analogy.
Okay, a beach.
All those grains of sand represent the particles that make up the beach.
That's a good analogy.
I love that.
Yeah.
It makes these really abstract ideas much more concrete.
It does.
Now, at this point, the skeptical friend brings up a big name, Edwin Hubble.
Hubble.
They mention Hubble's measurements of something called the drift of matter.
Drift of matter?
And how that supports the idea of an expanding universe, you know, the whole aftermath of the Big Bang.
Right, right.
This is where it gets really exciting.
Okay.
Hubble's work in the early 20th century was revolutionary.
Revolutionary. How so?
He observed that galaxies are moving away from each other, leading to the idea that the universe is actually expanding.
That's huge.
A pretty massive shift in our understanding of the cosmos.
It is.
This was a huge piece of evidence for the Big Bang Theory.
Okay.
And the podcast even points out how the phrase, thus advancing notions of an expanding universe,
advancing notions,
highlights that Hubble's work helped solidify the Big Bang Theory as a real possibility.
I see.
But even with Hubble's evidence, the friend isn't fully convinced.
Oh, really?
They say it's just a theory. Where's the proof?
Just a theory.
That's where things get tricky.
Tricky how?
The word theory gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah, it does.
But in science, it has a very specific meaning.
Right.
A scientific theory earns that title after rigorous testing and tons of evidence.
Exactly.
It's not just a random guess or a hunch.
No, not at all.
Right.
You have to have evidence.
And the podcast humorously points out that maybe the friend dozed off during that part of the lecture.
Maybe.
Which highlights an important point.
It is.
Active listening is crucial?
Yes. Especially when trying to understand complex topics.
Absolutely.
It's easy to get lost in the details or let our minds wander.
Yeah.
Speaking of details, I gotta ask about that slang the friend used to describe their physics class.
Okay.
Killer.
Killer.
Yeah, and in this case, killer isn't about, actual murder or anything.
Yeah.
It's slang for something incredibly difficult or intense.
I see.
Like you aced that killer exam or that workout was a killer.
That makes sense.
And don't forget that gem the friend dropped about math.
What was that?
Math schmath.
Math schmath.
I thought that was hilarious.
I kind of like that.
It's such a playful use of language.
Yeah.
Essentially, they're saying math. Who cares?
Right.
You could do this with other words, too, like work schmirk.
I've never heard that one.
I love that.
Yeah, that's fun.
It's like a verbal eye roll, but with style.
Oh, with style.
They also use duh, which we all know means something is super obvious.
Right.
Right? Like saying...
No kidding. No kidding.
It's often used playfully or sarcastically.
Yeah.
To emphasize just how obvious something is.
Makes sense.
So we've unpacked quite a bit here.
We have.
We've touched upon the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
Tackled some tricky vocabulary. And even unearthed some slang gold.
Nice.
What stands out to you as the most significant part so far?
Let me think.
For me, it's how this English learning podcast, of all things, opened the door to a conversation about the universe and the nature of scientific inquiry.
Interesting.
It really highlights how learning can spring from the most unexpected places.
I agree.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder to stay open to new perspectives.
Right.
And to embrace the connections between seemingly different fields.
Yeah.
You never know where that next aha moment will come from.
Exactly.
And speaking of unexpected connections, the podcast brought up something that really caught my attention.
What's that?
Teaching the Big Bang Theory is actually controversial in some places.
Oh, wow. I know, right?
It seems wild that something so fundamental to our understanding of the universe could be debated. It really does.
It just goes to show that science doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
It's always intertwined with social and cultural beliefs.
I see.
In some communities, the Big Bang Theory might challenge certain religious or cultural interpretations of creation.
That makes sense.
It's a powerful reminder that different perspectives exist.
Yeah.
And sometimes those perspectives clash.
They do.
But putting those controversies aside for a moment, I want to circle back to that fascinating idea that the podcast introduced, the drift of matter.
The drift of matter.
They described it as the remnants of the Big Bang explosion still drifting throughout the universe.
Interesting.
It's a poetic way of putting it, isn't it?
It is.
The drift of matter.
Yeah.
What they're really talking about is the ongoing expansion of the universe.
Okay.
Imagine dropping a pebble in a pond.
Right.
The ripples spread outward, right?
They do.
Well, in this case, the ripples are galaxies.
Yeah.
And all that cosmic stuff moving further and further apart.
Wow. I like that analogy.
Okay, that's a seriously cool image.
It is.
All this matter constantly in motion like a giant cosmic ballet.
The cosmic ballet.
All stemming from that initial Big Bang event.
Wow.
And that constant drift, that expansion, is exactly what Edwin Hubble observed and measured, providing a critical piece of the puzzle that is the Big Bang Theory.
That's cool.
The podcast also throws in some other mind-blowing astronomy terms like black hole, white dwarf, entropy, and singularity. I'm not gonna lie, some of these went right over my head.
Yeah, those are some tough ones.
But it's fascinating to get a glimpse into just how vast and complex the universe really is.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. For instance, they describe a black hole as a region in space where gravity is so strong that nothing, not even light,
we just get sucked in.
It's like a cosmic vacuum cleaner sucking up anything that gets too close.
That's a good way to put it.
Then you've got white dwarfs, which are essentially the remnants of dead stars.
Remnants of dead stars.
Small but incredibly dense.
Wow.
And what about entropy? That one sounded especially complex.
Entropy is basically a measure of disorder or randomness in a system.
Okay.
The idea is that over time, the universe tends to move towards a state of greater disorder.
I see.
Some physicists even connect this to the idea that the universe is slowly winding down.
Interesting. Kind of like my brain after a long day.
I feel that.
So a white dwarf is a dead star.
Yeah.
A black hole is a cosmic vacuum cleaner.
Right.
And entropy is like cosmic clutter.
Cosmic clutter. I like that.
Got it. Okay.
But singularity, that one really threw me for a loop.
Yeah, that one's a tough one.
That's probably the most mind-bending concept of them all.
I think so.
It refers to a point in space and time where density and gravity become infinite.
Infinite.
Think of it like the very, very beginning of the Big Bang.
Okay.
A point so small and dense that it defies our understanding of physics as we know it.
Wow.
It's hard to even imagine something like that.
I know, right? And to think all of this from an English learning podcast.
Who would have guessed?
Who would have guessed?
It's amazing.
It just goes to show that knowledge and curiosity can take you down some pretty unexpected paths.
It really does.
It's all about making those connections.
Yeah.
Seeing how ideas from different fields can illuminate and enrich each other.
Absolutely.
This deep dive has certainly sparked my curiosity.
Yeah.
There's so much more to learn about the Big Bang and the mysteries of the universe.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about the science.
Right.
We also got a taste of some really interesting language concepts.
We did.
That's right.
Beyond the slang, the podcast also highlighted some more formal vocabulary and phrases like rigor and rigorous,
Yes.
emphasizing the importance of precision and thoroughness in science.
Right.
Scientific knowledge isn't just built on hunches or guesses.
No.
It requires careful observation, experimentation, and analysis.
And then there was the word equivocate,
Equivocate.
which basically means to use vague language to avoid giving a clear answer.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like a politician dodging a tough question.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's a handy word to have in your vocabulary, especially when you're analyzing arguments or debates.
It is.
The phrase, thus advancing notions, also stood out.
Advancing notions.
It basically means that something is contributing to the progress or development of an idea.
Right.
Notions are simply ideas or beliefs.
Yeah.
So, thus advancing notions could be used to describe how a new discovery changes our understanding of a topic.
Exactly.
We see that with Hubble's observations, advancing notions of an expanding universe.
Very cool.
So we've covered the science, the language, and even touched upon some philosophical questions.
You have.
What does all of this mean for our listener, the deep diver who's been with us on this journey?
I think the biggest takeaway is that learning is a multifaceted process.
It is.
We can learn about the universe, expand our vocabulary, and gain new perspectives, all while listening to an engaging conversation. It's about being open to unexpected sources of knowledge and seeing the connections between things that might seem completely unrelated.
It's like that saying, knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
But I'd add that knowledge is also a key that unlocks endless possibilities.
Oh, I like that.
Absolutely. And the more we learn, the more we realize how much more there is to discover.
That's true.
It's about nurturing that sense of wonder and asking those big, sometimes uncomfortable questions.
Right.
Exactly. The universe is full of mysteries just waiting to be unraveled.
They are.
So if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, don't let it stop here.
Wow.
There is a whole universe of resources out there about the Big Bang Theory, from books and articles to documentaries and even online courses.
Wow.
You could even take a deeper dive into the cultural and religious interpretations that we touched upon earlier.
That's a good idea.
And don't be afraid to explore those seemingly unrelated fields.
Right.
Remember how we started this whole conversation with an English learning podcast? You never know what fascinating connections you might find or what new passions you might ignite.
That's true.
Who knows? Maybe you'll discover a newfound love for physics, or even decide to brush up on your English skills.
Yeah.
Or perhaps you'll be inspired to share your own unique perspective with the world.
It could happen.
The possibilities are truly endless.
They are.
The main thing is to stay curious. Keep asking questions and keep exploring.
Absolutely.
After all, the universe is a pretty amazing place, even if it all started with a bang.
It is an amazing place.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Big Bang Theory. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and never stop exploring.
So long, everybody.
Yeah, it really is.
It's pretty amazing.
It is.
I mean, just all this from an English learning podcast. It's kind of wild.
Who knew?
I know.
Oh, we'd end up talking about black holes and entropy.
And singularities.
And singularities, right?
Yeah, all those things.
I think it's a good reminder that,
yeah,
learning can come from anywhere. You don't have to be in a classroom.
Right.
You don't have to be reading a textbook.
Exactly.
It's about being curious and following those threads of curiosity wherever they might lead.
Absolutely. I think that's a great takeaway from this whole deep dive.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe some of our listeners are inspired to go and learn more about the Big Bang Theory now, or
right, or brush up on their English skills.
Brush up on their English skills, right?
You never know.
You never know.
It could spark a whole new interest.
Exactly.
That's the beauty of it.
So to all our deep divers out there, keep exploring.
Keep learning.
Keep asking questions.
And keep wondering.
And we'll see you on our next deep dive.
Okay, so you know how everyone's always looking for that magic trick to just suddenly become fluent in English?
Right.
Like you wake up one day and bah.
Yeah.
You just know it.
I wish I'd be out of a job.
Exactly.
That's true.
But you know what we do have?
Yeah.
We've got this awesome set of tips from you guys listening.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about them is they're not gimmicks. They actually tap into how our brains are wired to learn.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a deep dive today.
Love it.
Into these research-backed strategies for making English fluency feel way less like this impossible dream and more like this, cool adventure.
Absolutely.
So to kick things off, one of the things that really jumped out at me from all these tips is this idea that active engagement is key.
Totally.
Right. It's not just about passively absorbing stuff.
Right.
It's about actually doing things with the language.
Absolutely. I mean, this aligns perfectly with how our brains learn best, right? Through active use and meaningful context.
Totally.
Not just memorizing a bunch of rules.
Yeah, no one wants to do that.
No, not at all.
So let's dive into some specifics.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it.
This first one is something I bet everyone listening already does to some extent.
Okay.
It's watching English language stuff.
Yeah.
We're talking movies, TV shows.
Of course.
Even falling down a YouTube rabbit hole at 3 in the morning.
That counts.
It all counts, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So what's the magic here?
Well, what's fascinating is this power of what we call implicit learning.
Okay.
So think about how you learn your first language.
Right.
It wasn't through textbooks, right?
Yep.
It was by being surrounded by it.
Exactly.
So when you watch English media, your brain is low-key picking up on these patterns, the pronunciation, the intonation, all without you even realizing it.
So it's like osmosis.
It really is. It's like language osmosis. Okay. But so I shouldn't just mindlessly be scrolling through TikTok then, right?
Well, a little mindful scrolling never hurts.
Okay.
But here's a challenge for you.
Oh, okay.
Try switching on the English subtitles.
Okay.
Even if you usually watch with dubs.
Right.
At first, just glance at them.
Get the gist.
You get the gist. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then try to rely on them less and less over time.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
I love that.
Little challenges like that can go a long way.
And speaking of challenges,
yes.
Tip number 2 is all about actually speaking English.
Putting yourself out there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Which can be scary for a lot of people. Yeah. It's definitely outside that comfort zone for many.
Totally.
But it doesn't have to be this big scary presentation or anything.
Right.
Think about those small little interactions.
Okay.
Ordering coffee, asking for directions, chatting with the cashier.
Right.
These tiny wins build so much confidence.
Totally.
And you get comfortable using the language in real situations.
Almost like you're leveling up your conversational skills.
Exactly. One interaction at a time.
Yeah. And if you're, craving a bit more structure, look into those online language exchange platforms.
Oh, yeah.
You can connect with people from literally all over the world.
That's so cool.
Who are also learning English.
It's like having a built-in accountability partner.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so tip number 3.
Yes.
This one is reading.
Oh, yeah.
And before anyone groans thinking about textbooks, we're not talking about that.
No.
We're talking about stuff you actually enjoy reading.
Totally.
Like blogs, news articles, maybe those thriller novels you just can't put down.
Absolutely. It's all about making it enjoyable and relevant to you. And here's the key.
Okay.
Don't get bogged down in every single word.
Right.
Focus on understanding the main idea.
Okay.
The overall context.
You'll be surprised how much you can pick up just from the words you do know.
It's like solving a puzzle.
It is.
Right.
The more pieces you have, the clearer the picture.
Exactly.
Exactly. And start with shorter pieces to build that momentum. And then you can gradually work your way up to, you know, more challenging stuff.
Totally. And it's not a race either.
Not at all.
Right.
It's about consistency.
Yeah.
It's about building that habit.
Love that. Okay, so tip number 4. This one's all about getting organized.
Okay.
It's taking notes on new words.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of this one.
Yeah.
I have like notebooks full
I love that.
of words and definitions.
It's like building your own personal dictionary.
It really is.
Yeah, and what's amazing about this is you're actively engaging with those words. You're not just reading them.
Right.
You're stopping.
Yeah, you're reflecting.
Thinking about them.
Thinking about them. And you're making them your own.
Yes.
You know, use a notebook, use a flashcard app, whatever works. Oh, I love those apps that use spaced repetition.
Yes, me too.
It's so good.
It's like they keep quizzing you at just the right time.
Yeah.
To make sure it really sticks.
Totally. And don't just write down the definition.
Good point.
Right.
Look up some example sentences.
Okay.
See the word in action.
Yes.
That's where the magic happens.
That's where it clicks.
It really does.
Okay, so are you ready for a tip that's gonna like add some rhythm to your learning?
I'm intrigued.
It's music.
Of course, yes.
Okay.
I love this one.
Music is like, it's such a powerful tool. It helps you absorb pronunciation.
The rhythm, even slang and those idioms.
Right.
In a way that feels natural and fun.
Totally. And you know what? I bet everyone listening already listens to at least some English music.
Probably.
So why not make it more active?
Yeah. Turn it into a study session.
Yeah.
Kind of. Exactly.
I've definitely caught myself singing along to songs and then being like, wait, I actually understand what they're saying.
That's the best feeling.
It's like a light bulb moment.
It is.
So if you want to level up even more, print out the lyrics.
Oh, yeah.
And follow along as you're listening.
That's a great idea.
Or even try karaoke.
Uh-huh.
It's like a fun way to practice your pronunciation and intonation.
Yeah. Without feeling self-conscious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for our last tip, let's like literally bring English learning into your everyday life.
Okay, I like this.
Right.
I like where this is going.
We're talking about labeling stuff around your house.
Yeah. Everyday objects.
Love it. So this technique uses like the power of visual reinforcement.
Totally.
Right. Think about it. You see these things every single day. But now they're also like these little reminders of their English names.
It's like turning your house into a giant flashcard deck.
It is. It really is. It's like when I was a kid, my parents labeled everything in our house with its Spanish name.
Oh, wow.
I might not remember all the grammar rules from those classes, but I still remember la silla and el refrigerador.
That's amazing. The power of visuals.
Exactly, and it's so easy to do.
It is.
Just grab some sticky notes or a label maker.
Whatever you've got.
Yeah, start with a few things.
A few key items.
Yeah, and then just like gradually expand your labeling empire.
I love that you're labeling empire.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, what's like the biggest takeaway for you?
You know, for me, it's that fluency isn't about perfection. It's about progress.
Okay.
It's about finding that sustainable, enjoyable routine that fits into your life.
I love that.
Find what you enjoy.
Yeah.
Be consistent and don't be afraid to experiment.
That's such good advice.
Have fun with it.
Okay, so for everyone listening out there, what's one tiny little step you can take today to make English like a more active part of your life? Maybe it's putting on those subtitles. Maybe it's trying a language exchange app.
Awesome.
Or hey, maybe you're going to go label your coffee mug.
I love it.
Right?
Start small.
Every little bit counts.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks so much for joining me for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll catch you in the next one.
See you then.